Welcome back. In this video, we're going to start to prepare the braces to be able to be put on the top and on the back. Bracing is one of the things that everybody talks about, and there's so much nuance in it and how it affects the top, and you know what, there's a lot of truth to that. There's also a lot of old wives' tales about it, but there is tradition, there is common wisdom. This is the thing where people are going to be asking about, is the width going to have an effect? Is the height going to have an effect? Is the grain direction going to have an effect? Yes, to all of those things. Now, you can get into that subtlety, but it takes a lot of instruments before you start figuring out whether one is going to be brighter, clearer, darker, woodier, all the different things that even a slight change in what the bracing is will have an effect. But it's only one thing, so let's not make too much out of this and move forward. I'm going to go ahead and use the bracing sizes as described in the drawings in this instrument because, well, they're tried and true. And there's a certain amount of thought and history and exploration that's already gone into them. I could make some modest changes, I could make some significant changes, and that's all up to you. But I'm going to start off by trying to get to exactly what's on the drawings that we're using. Here's my brace stock. You can tell because it says bracing on it. Now when I first got this material, it was a little bit wet. It wasn't green, but it was moist, and that was part of the shipping and making sure that it didn't check while it was en route. I've painted the ends of it to keep the material from drying out too quickly at the ends because the wood naturally wants to move moisture through the length of it as the tree is growing. So it comes out the end faster than it comes out the face or the edge. And that would allow it to shrink too quick or faster at the ends than it does in the middle, and that would cause checking, which would be a problem. So I had painted the ends before. I'm going to get rid of that right now so that we can take a good close look at the end grain. So as you see, the grain on this is perfectly quartered. But if I spin this around, we got a little bit of a slash grain going on here. Something changed inside this piece of material as it went from one end to the other. Hey, it was a living thing. It's not trying to make a perfectly quartered piece for the whole length here for me. I'm going to try to find the best piece of material I can out of this bracing. You're not always going to have it just fall in your lap being perfect. I'm going to analyze this a little bit, and to do that, I'm going to split it. I could just mark out, and some people do this, mark out where the grain is and then go to the table saw or the bandsaw, cut it out. You probably have a better yield that way because you're not going to waste any material. But I want to do a little discovery on this because the common wisdom, common knowledge is that a perfectly quartered piece is going to allow you the most strength with the least material. And that way you'll have a lighter, more responsive instrument. That's the common wisdom. There is a whole lot of discussion. I mean, braces are one of the focal points that everybody has about tonal qualities of their instruments. And there's a lot of different opinions. So I'm going to go through what the common wisdom and common knowledge is about this. And if you want to have a further discussion about it, let's have it as to whether it's true or not. It's great conversations. But I'm going to discover the strength in this, I'm going to be using a process of splitting the material, because by splitting it, the strongest direction of the material is going to overwhelm the weaker direction of the material, and thereby I will find the strongest piece for the least amount of material. This is the knife that I use to split my braces with. What's important in a splitting tool is that it doesn't necessarily need to be really sharp on the edge. You're not after slicing through the fibers of the wood, you're actually after separating them. So what's important with the knife is that it be reasonably thick and have a wedge shape that's equal on both sides, so that it will put equal pressure on either side of the split and allow the knife to find the weak spot and the strength of the material. So to do this as well, I've marked out one grain line as close to the center of this material as I can. And this is important because if I try to split this, and I'm going to put it at the angle that the grain is growing, but if I try to split it in the middle, I'm going to have equal amounts of strength on either side. That's going to give me my best split. If I came to the outer edge like this, I've got all kinds of strength over here and nothing over here, and the knife is going to bend that piece of material out and it's going to wander on the split, and I don't want to do that. So when possible, you want to try to start splitting from the center. When I split my braces, I want to do it on a very solid surface, so I do it on the ground in my shop. It also helps me see what's going on and gives me a little bit better leverage. So I'm going to take the knife now, and I'm going to put it right on the grain line that I had selected and give it a quick little tap to get started. So now I'm starting to stress the wood and split it, and I'm just going to keep going. You can see I've got a nice little split going there right now. So the wedge action of my splitting knife is what's going to be doing the work now. Now I can continue to tap it. I can twist and pry on it if I want to try to find the weak spot. Now if I did this right, I'm going to get a nice, shiny, consistent grain on the side here, and you're not going to see any of the cathedraling that you see when you cut through a piece of material. If you see any points or anything in here going from one year to another, that means you didn't get a good split. This one looks like it has a very excellent split. You'll sometimes get a little bit of a topography through here with other sort of undulations that were in the tree as it was growing, but I can absolutely see now the angle that was here and a little bit of a twist until it comes out the other end. But a lot of that twist seems to be happening from about this point forward. So looking for my X braces, I'm going to take it out of this end of the piece of material, and this can become some finger braces down here. I'm currently building two instruments. One is the double-aught that we're doing here for the all spruce, and the other is one of my A-types for the Jake build. At any rate, these have got two different bracing patterns. If I lay one of the templates on top of the other, you'll see that the double-aught has got a much flatter X to it and shorter X braces than the A-type does. On the A-type, it's got a much taller sort of X, and so they get longer. So I'm going to be picking the best pieces for those X braces right now because they're the longest ones that I've got and somewhat the most critical of what I have to put into these instruments. So I'm going to choose from there. I could continue to be splitting these and keep finding the weakest spot, strongest spot of the material, but now that I've discovered where it is on this piece, I'm going to go ahead and just use that as a reference point and start cutting on the saws to get my pieces out. I think I've got enough information here now without going to all the trouble of splitting every single brace. If you want to split every single brace, a lot of people do it that way. Fantastic. I just think that it's got a lot more work to it than the benefit that it gives you. I want to have a nice flat surface to run against my fence on the bandsaw when I cut out these braces. I'll be able to use my joiner, but if you don't have a joiner, here's a neat little technique to be able to get a flat surface. I've taken the split face and put it down onto this sanding sheet that I've got. And I've also marked it with a piece of chalk to be able to easily see where the high spots are. And I've gone and done a little bit of sanding here. You can sand this whole thing like this until you get it nice and flat, or enough flat spots to be able to run it across your fence, but that's a lot of work. So once I've done that and I can see where the high spots are, I can take my plane and hold it flat on that spot and take material off a whole lot faster than the sanding would do, and then go back to sanding. You can get it done pretty quick this way. have a drum sander or some other way of making a consistently thick piece of material, here's a simple little jig to be used with a planer. 2 pieces of 5/16 inch thick stock and a stop block on the end, tacked down with some crazy glue onto a piece of melamine, and I get to put my piece of material in here and plane it off until the planer stops taking a shaving. I've resawn all of my brace stock here to about 5/8 of an inch because most of it's going to be that tall or less. And I've got my 2X braces, which is the ones that I need the longest pieces for to start with, and I picked out my finest pieces for that. Here's a little illustration of how much variance there is in different instruments. This double-aught has a greater than 90-degree opening on the X at the bottom. It's 102 degrees in angle right here. But if you go over to my A-type, I'm under 90 degrees on this one. It's only about 82 or 83 degrees with the angle on the inside here. So there's a wide range of things that work well, and a lot of it has to do with placement of sound hole, placement of bridge, shape of the body, size of the body. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. The current plan on the double-aught is for this 102 degrees. That's what I'm going to be sticking with here. So now I'm going to make a little lap joint to put these together. This is a very critical joint, and I want to get it right, and I want to get it tight. Pencils, even a fine point pencil like this, are actually kind of crude for this sort of work in my estimation. I like to use a marking knife. Now you can use a single-edged razor blade or some other sort of knife if you want, but this is a little marking knife. I've got my first brace lying on my template exactly where I want it to be, a little excess on each end. And my template actually has the marks in it have been scratched into the template. And I like this for many reasons. One is that it makes a very fine line, but another is I can put this marking knife right in that etched mark and slide it up against my brace, and I know that it's in a good position. I just pushed it into the soft spruce there and made a nice clean mark. I'm going to go ahead and put a pencil mark on this because I want to be able to see it easily. And I've got my protractor set up to make a mark the proper direction, proper angle here. So now I can put my protractor on here, set my knife right down. Let me see if I can make this so you guys can see it easily. I'm going to set my knife right down into that mark that I just made in the soft spruce and slide the bevel gauge right up to it. So I've got my first accurate, nice mark right there. And I know that this is the side. I'm going to put a little X where the waist is going to be, where the other piece is going to come through. Now I can go and make my first cut with my saw. Got a little ahead of myself there. Actually, before I go making the cut, I got to make another mark. Again, putting the marking knife right in that little notch so everything's accurate. I'll slide my square right up against it. And I only necessarily need to mark about halfway through this brace. I could mark all the way through, but I'm only going to be taking half of it out to make this lap joint. So I've set a little protractor up here for 5/30 seconds, or just a hair under actually, because the material is 5/8 of an inch thick. And then I'll go ahead and I'll mark the depth of what I want this to be. Now I can go make my cut. I'm going to be using a very, very fine-toothed saw here. I want to make a very neat and clean cut. This saw I can actually lay in to the X-Acto cut that I made a moment ago. It does not have the greatest chip clearance, but it does make a cut that's mighty clean. So now, to get this really accurate, I'm going to remove just a little bit of material from the side with the X on it there, so that the actual piece that I'm going to be fitting in here, I could lay in the groove. And I'm going to try to undercut actually just a little bit as I lay my knife in here. I'm going to undercut this a little bit. I want to make this as tight a joint as I possibly can. So now I'm going to cut almost inside that line. Hope we got a plumb cut there. And then a little 1/8 inch chisel should knock that out pretty quick and easy. Double check my material. Okay, I'm still just a hair tight, which is what I would prefer in a situation like this, because now I can come right to the line that I actually scribed and shave this off until I'm tightly fitted. I can finish cutting this to depth just with a chisel and getting it level, or sometimes I'll use my little router plane, which is just basically a chisel set up in a router fixture, which will allow me to start coming from one side and then finish from the other, knowing that I'm very consistently cutting the depth, but without blowing out by just pushing out the other side. And now I've put the joint together, and I'll do the same thing here. I'll mark it out, cut the other side. So we've got the lap joint made, and it fits very tightly. This is what we want to have. Matter of fact, it's kind of difficult to get it together. So I've got a small trick that I learned from a Soji screen maker. If your joints are really tight, and they should be really tight, they might have a little difficulty getting in past the square edge of the cut. So take a small block of hard material, harder than the spruce, lay it in the groove, and give it a little dent. Just give it a little bevel there. This will help let the joint move together, and when you put the moisture of the glue in the joint, it'll swell back up. There's a couple of different ways that these joints will go back together, and some of them will just be wrong. So make sure that you dry fit them first and put them on your patterns to make sure that they're actually in the proper orientation before you go to glue them up. Well, I've got the X braces are glued together, and I've got all my brace stock ready to be shaped and fit onto the top and into the back. But I gotta get a rosette in before I can start bracing the top, and I guess that's gonna be the next video. See you then.